Hey everyone, it's Kenny. I did not fill up my water cup. That's fine. I am here to do a little reflection video. Don't want to keep it too long. I have been reading Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. Incredible book. Its basic premise is talking about the idea of how we identify via labels about our sense of self and how to disconnect from the labels that we have for ourselves and how that process brings peace into our lives. So, I think, for instance, if you were to say, "Oh, I am someone that's very angry," or I'm a great soccer player," or "I am sensitive," or "I am shy," or "I am a good parent," right? That when we have labels about ourselves, which everyone does, right? This is not something that we can completely 100% get rid of, I don't think. I think it's an undoing process, a continual undoing process, and an awareness process, right? An awareness consciousness process is that if we are able to look at ourselves and identify what are the things that we identify with. For me, I identify with being a good actor. I identify with being an angry person. I identify with being passionate, and I identify with being loving, right? So all of those things kind of build us a form of ourselves that is not actually like who we are. Who we are is just pure presence. And so whenever we think, oh, like I am a loving person, what does a loving person do? That is from how I understand it, acting towards that version, towards that form of ourselves, towards that identification with ourselves, may be beneficial in doing like a virtuous thing, but it also isn't optimally present with people in the very moment, in the here and now. And that peace comes with allowing happiness and sadness to come in and to come out. And also, peace comes with trying to not hold on to an idea of ourselves. Um, so if and that holding on to those versions of ourselves, like, oh, I'm going to do everything I can to try to be as loving of a person as I can, and the actions that we take, if actions are taken to try to prove to ourselves that that form is true, then that is what Eckhart Tolle calls an ego, right? And so to be able to relinquish our ego, we have to completely get rid of, completely disconnect ourselves from form, from the ideas that we have of ourselves, and to just do things, what he says, perform functions, to do things without ascribing an idea of those actions to our actions. This it sound it I just do not do a very good job of explaining this. But he is a brilliant author, and I would really highly recommend his book, A New Earth, which is awakening to your life's purpose, and helping it. I think the ultimate uh, goal is to help us live in the present and to not search for happiness, because happiness is fleeting, sadness is fleeting. They're all ephemeral. They're all impermanent. It's a somewhat Buddhist. Well, now saying that is ascribing that philosophy to a form, which is incorrect, which is not optimal. Um, it is a it yeah, I just really like the book. So, yeah. Okay, well, that already took 4 or 5 minutes. I just wanted to mention it because I'm breaking some new ground with peacefulness and I think through that book. Yesterday, I had an interview with Marco where I got very emotional. This guy, 14-year-old from Mexico, he is just such a purely kind human being. And I was processing this with my roommate last night, is that I got so emotional because I see him, this 14-year-old who has learned English through videos, basically self-taught English. Um, he plays like 3 instruments already. Um, he is just such a kind person, and I so innocent. Um, and I got emotional because I think I think about 2 nights ago. I watched Nightcrawler, rewatched Nightcrawler with my roommate, and um, it just reminded me how the institutions of our society today are run by megamaniacal psychopaths that will do anything to get themselves more, to position themselves into a more strategic place of power, right? And that I was starting to cry and starting to get emotional because those people, those psychopaths in positions of power will do anything, even destroy opportunities for people like Marco's parents who may not have a job now, and for millions of Americans, for billions of people around the world who are just trying to earn their keep and trying to live a life that they enjoy and are striving towards kind of dreams. You know, these people who are striving towards dreams, um, a lot of their dreams are and hopes are dashed because of psychopaths that just want to have more, achieve more, um, and it is one of my missions to try to figure out how to. There's this really good book that I don't have here. It's called The Psychopath Test by John Ronson. It's either John Ronson or Ron Johnson. The Psychopath Test. And that book goes into how prevalent our institutional culture is grounded in psychopathic behavior and rules, right? Capitalism is a system of thought that encourages psychopathic behavior. And this channel is just one other reason that this channel is here in the first place is because I want to combat that psychopathic culture here in our society with a culture, and I want to combat it with love. You know, proactive, you know, grassroots movement love. That's what I'm here for. And that's who I'm here to take on. That's who we're here to take on. Are people who don't care about you. The majority of human beings care about each other, and that is my faith, that is my hope. That's my belief. And that psychopaths are only a minority, right? So let's take them on. Okay. So I just watched my friend Jake, who has been on here before, Jake's podcast, number 75. I'll put a link in the description below. But his video was really interesting because about halfway through, 45 minutes through, he was talking about how he feels like everything has been like the internet has been a place that is just kind of made more bland people's opinions, and that it doesn't seem like anyone has any original ideas. And I think that's true. I think the illusion of that is true. That that people feel like there aren't any original voices anymore. But I think if we're really interested in discovering new creative voices, we have to go to books. We have to go back in time, and we have to read stories that were influential in their times, and see like how those ideas have translated through history. And I have a few books here that I kind of want to talk about, because I think there are a lot of great books that kind of are a survey of ideas. There are books that bring to the reader multiple ideas and ways to view different philosophies and different points of view. And so, I mean, today, the status quo is intersectionality is kind of starting to become a really an important viewpoint in the world, right? The idea of, okay, what are the identities that kind of define a human being? One's race, one's age, one's religion, one's gender, one's sexuality, one's and actually I would also include personality, right? Introvert, extrovert, assertive or not assertive. Those are all intersections, and right now, race is a huge intersection that all of society is looking at. But it's socioeconomic class, duh. Like, all of these intersections help define a person. Now, Eckhart Tolle would say that, and this is something that's crazy, I think, is that the more Eckhart Tolle would say that it's that if we define ourselves by putting by saying I am black or I am a white person, right? That taking actions towards solidifying those forms in our minds is egotistical and is bound to create unhappiness and dissatisfaction with our own lives, which I agree with. And so intersectionality is a way to view the world. It's a helpful way to kind of like dig down into intricacies, but it may not be the way to achieve peace of mind. It may not be a way, and thus it may not be the way to, it may be the way to bring about equality and justice in some ways, but it may not be sufficient. What may be sufficient is to acknowledge these things in ourselves and to release them. Now, I mean, that's Eckhart Tolle's argument, and I actually tend to agree with it, which is pretty controversial, I would say. And I would probably be debated as being racist for providing that opinion, maybe. But I think there's an interesting argument there that I would love to kind of talk to with people if they're interested. Okay, so now some book recommendations that I want to talk about. I want to kind of keep this shorter. Hey guys, thank you for watching. I just wanted to make sure to get a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. But okay, so these are some great books. We've been talking a lot about bullying and education reform on this channel, and this book, Diane Ravitch's Reign of Error, talks a lot about how we can build an education system that kind of gets halfway to where I would be interested in going. It's a very smart book. It talks a lot about how standardized testing is fucked and is completely destroying the American mind. So I would recommend this book. I would also recommend, I don't have the book here, The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt, which also talks about cancel culture and how language is being viewed by some leftist woke groups as as that language is being defined as violent instead of harmful, whereas violence is only really physical, whereas harm is kind of emotional. And how an important distinction needs to be made if we're going to move forward towards confronting cancel culture about the difference of language being violent versus language being viewed as harmful. So that's Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Diane Ravitch's Reign of Error. This is about standardized testing and also about funding of public education. If you're interested in kind of understanding philosophy, I would highly recommend this book here, The History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. He was Ludwig Wittgenstein's um, um, he was his mentor, and this book is I mean, it goes from Plato until who's the last guy? The utilitarians like John Stuart Mill, which is still a philosophy that's very much followed, and it's a paradigm that a lot of people kind of fall under. Utilitarianism is basically the philosophy of, okay, what are the pros of doing this? There's an action that I want to take. There are a few actions that I could take, right? Like in school, like I could either ask that girl out or I could ask that girl out, right? So what would be the pros and cons of asking that girl out, and what are the pros and cons of asking that girl out? Thinking about things in terms of pros and cons is a utilitarian approach, as well as the idea of like, okay, like, um, uh, would I rather help? Would I rather help if you saw two people? If you were given the option of, um, there are two strangers drowning in the ocean, and then there's your mother drowning in the ocean. Who would you run and save? Would you run and try to save the two strangers, or run and try to save the your mother? Right? A utilitarian approach would say go and save the two people because you are saving more lives, and that the emotional connection doesn't matter as much as really the pure number. So I mean, if you're interested in kind of getting to know any of those things kind of a little more in depth, the history of Western philosophy is a really good place to start. Huge book, really easily readable though, surprisingly. So another thing that has been talked about on this channel is the idea of how to kind of end bullying, and an approach has several approaches have come up, several of them of which I agree with. But this guy, Robert Putnam, he hits on all of these philosophies and more, and provides some solutions towards helping our society listen to kids more, and also help to create a culture of love. And what he talks about in a nutshell is the idea that we need to secure the family base, right? Meaning parents need to know how to unconditionally love, which is, I mean, very hard to do for any like privileged person, let alone someone who is going through many difficult issues. It also talks about school and how important school is towards the socializing process, um, and also the ideas of third places, right? Churches, community centers, boys and girls clubs, YMCA's, and how those places, churches, play a part in also cultivating the kind of moral growth of a community and a culture. And so our kids basically talks about how it takes a village to raise a child. Highly recommend that. I did my sociology thesis in college about his other book, groundbreaking work, Bowling Alone, The Death and Revival of American Community. If you're interested in economics at all, this is a great survey of economics, by Ha-Joon Chang. What it does in this book is there are about 7 or 8 philosophical traditions, one of which is my favorite, which I'm going to introduce last, best for last. Um, the idea of institutional economics. So today we kind of live in a world, in a paradigmatic way of thinking of neoclassical economics, which is um, very much based on like supply and demand, based off of goods and products, right? Kind of more narrow thinking and also very kind of mathematical models. That's how a lot of like collegiate institutions think about economics, right? Which is kind of a narrow approach and doesn't really explore many other kind of philosophical traditions. This book goes into 7 or 8 of them. It goes into Marxist thought. It goes into kind of older thinking, and also kind of some New Age approaches, Keynesian economics, which is also somewhat explored at college level economics courses. But then this is the book. I mean, these are the books here. I always keep this book around for reference. From Pleasure Machines to Moral Communities and Evolutionary Economics without the idea of Homo economics. Well, I don't I, economicus, Homo economicus, which is the idea of like utility, the number meaning more than actual like human connection in economics. And what's cool about this kind of economic approach is that it takes into account the idea uh, of Darwin's idea of evolution, and how also how what Hodgson, so Geoffrey Hodgson is the author. What he posits is that our institutions are not sufficiently geared towards changing with the times, and how one of the reasons that is because the rich are very interested in this idea of um, conspicuous spending, which is like keeping up with the Joneses kind of spending, right? Like if someone is a billionaire and then there's another person who has $800 million, and the billionaire is able to buy and maintain, a jet, then the person with $800 million wants that jet too. And so that's why the people with $800 million are are driven to make even more, because the people who are rich have like these gigantic houses, these gigantic yachts, these gigantic planes, and all the people who are just beneath them see those as status symbols, right? So these status symbols are the things that kind of keep greed going. It's just one of many interesting things that the evolution of evolutionary economics, institutional economics, kind of looks at. And also, what he posits is that we need to come up with plans as to how to um, plans on how to make our institutions breathe more with the times. By that I mean, how can we get economic and political institutions to actually listen to what the people want and what the people need? This is why I talk about anti-corruption all the time. And I will once again put the what's it called, the link to the Anti-Corruption Act, represent.us, down in the description below. That is literally the first thing we have to do to be able to move towards a system that can help change institutions to listen to us, where we can talk, more openly about different economic strategies, so that we can come up with a more informed approach as to how to move forward. This is how we can end bullying and bring like community centers back, and having more of an impact in young children's life. Uh, this is how we'll be able to end standardized testing in America. Um, and really, I think that if we're able to connect to ourselves in the present moment and understand what we love to do, purely purely and not based off of trying to do things to fulfill a particular label about ourselves, to try to prove that we are a certain way. I think if we follow this path, we can achieve all of those things. We can solve corruption. We can bring our society back to a place where it is the envy of the world. Um, So anyway, thank you so much for listening to that. I really kind of wanted to do that. I've been really wanting to talk about some of the books that I love, and I hope that some of you guys will go out there and check out those books. And yeah, okay. I felt like that was really formal, actually. Talking about all those things makes me feel like I don't know. I don't know. I think they're really important ideas, and I feel really bashful kind of talking about them because it's really nerdy, but it's also really important. Um, I don't want to. Sometimes I feel like if I'm talking about these things that I sound really pretentious. You know, my intention is not to. My intention is to connect you all to resources that may be able to unlock some different ideas in your mind, right? Like Jake was saying, people feel like there aren't really other original ideas, but there are. There are so many original ideas, and maybe some of these books can help connect you to some ideas that may spark things in your mind where you'll be able to talk about things to your friends and your family about how things can change. There is hope. Uh, okay. Okay. That's my reflection. You won't hear from me again, just alone for a while. So, COVID. Okay. Bye bye.